Welcome to the Critical Hour. We're coming to you from the capital of the United States of America, Washington, D.C., here on Radio Sputnik. I'm your host, political scientist, author, and nationally syndicated columnist, Dr. Wilmer Leon. I'm joined here by my co-host, political analyst, Garland Nixon.
Thank you, Wilmer.
For the next 2 hours, we will explore and analyze the salient news stories that are impacting the global village in which we live. RT reports blast rocks Iran's key gas pipeline. A massive fireball and column of smoke were captured in videos circulating online. Is this Nord Stream Redux? For insight, let's turn to our first guest. He holds the John J. and Rebecca Moores Chair of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston. He's one of the most prolific writers of our time. His latest books are entitled, I Dare Say, a Gerald Horne reader, and Acknowledging Radical Histories. Dr. Gerald Horne, as always, sir, welcome back.
Thank you for inviting me.
A large blast has ruptured a natural gas pipeline in central Iran, according to the Mehr news agency, citing local officials. Evaluation teams have been dispatched to the scene to assess the damage. Dr. Horne, your thoughts? Of course, this could just be an unfortunate occurrence. It could also be sabotage. Your thoughts?
Well, it's understandable why you would suspect sabotage in light of the Nord Stream 2 incident of a year or so ago, whereby the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh reported that the U.S. authorities were deeply implicated in that crime. Interestingly enough, you may recall that months before this crime, Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, was standing next to President Biden, where President Biden more or less promised that this Nord Stream 2 pipeline would not go through. And of course, the results are predictable. That is to say that Germany, which is an occupied country, has become even more dependent upon energy supplies from the United States of America, which has been a boon to energy suppliers, not least in Texas and alongst the Texas-Louisiana border. And so when we see this incident today with regard to Iran, obviously we are quite suspicious because we also know that the United States has been bent and determined on destabilizing the Islamic Republic ever since the overthrow of the Shah some decades ago. Their accomplice in crime, speaking of Israel, has a similar motivation. And in fact, we already know that Israel has been involved up to and including assassination attempts and successful attempts on the lives of Iranian scientists. And then we also know that the United States and Israel are looking for scapegoats in light of the unfolding debacle, not only in Gaza, where the flower of Israeli youth are being carted out in body bags on a regular basis, but increasingly in northern Israel, where confrontations with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon have sharpened of late, and the U.S. authorities and the Israelis would like to blame Iran for this situation and ignore the local grievances in Palestine and in southern Lebanon. And that's not to mention what's going on with regard to the stiff sanctions, and I choose that word carefully, that the Yemenis have imposed upon Israel. That is to say, attacking vessels headed towards the Suez Canal, presumably towards the Israeli port of Eilat. This has slowed down commerce in Israel considerably. The economy is in free fall. And there is this nostrum, which we repeated more than once in these airwaves, that has been attributed to late Pentagon Chief Donald Rumsfeld, that if you have a problem, the way to deal with it is to enlarge it. The U.S. and Israel have a problem in Gaza, in Yemen, in southern Lebanon, and so they're trying to enlarge the problem by seeking to destabilize the Islamic Republic, which from their point of view would then weaken resistance in historic Palestine and weaken resistance in southern Lebanon and Yemen. Now, I think that that's far-fetched at best. Having said that, I don't think we can put it past these devilish elements in Washington and Tel Aviv.
And Dr. Horne, also, I think that the Israelis want to provoke Iran into some kind of a response because they're trying to drag the U.S. into a fight. They know that there are hawks that want to fight with Iran, and could that be part of the motivation here?
Well, clearly, and there's another player which we would be remiss if we ignored, and I'm speaking of Pakistan. Recall that the exchanging of missiles between Pakistan and Iran in recent weeks. Recall as well that Pakistan is going through a patch of turmoil in light of the fact that the leader, Imran Khan, or perhaps I should say the former leader, because he has been detained by the all-powerful Pakistani military because he outraged the United States when he visited Moscow seeking concord with Vladimir Putin, and he came back and had to face the music from the Pakistani military. But alas, what has happened is that in recent elections, the party of Imran Khan, the celebrated cricketer, did quite well. And so that's putting the Pakistanis in a bit of a mess. And so they too have a motivation by seeking to distract the attention of a disgruntled populace away from the pressing issues in that predominantly Muslim country by attacking Iran. And we should not ignore the fact that historically the Pakistani military has been armed to the teeth by U.S. imperialism, and therefore the United States wields considerable influence in Islamabad, and as well, that helps to give further reason to suspect that this fireball that we saw in Iran with regard to an apparent or alleged or purported sabotage of a natural gas facility may have Washington's fingerprints all over it.
Two things. One, you mentioned the uptick in the conflict between Iran and Pakistan, and you talked about the exchange of missiles in the recent weeks. And there are those. If we look at the distance that these missiles traveled between Iran and Pakistan, there are those. When you look at the distance, it's equidistant between Iran and Tel Aviv. And so there are those who say that this missile exchange is as much a message to the United States / Israel that we can strike Tel Aviv just as easily as we're striking Pakistan. And I think it was yesterday or the day before, Hassan Nasrallah made the statement that this conflict in Gaza is bigger than, I'm paraphrasing, bigger than Pakistan. It encompasses the region. And basically, I interpret that as a clarion call to say, all adults in the pool now, it's time for everybody to jump in and swim. Your thoughts?
Well, certainly we must somehow be able to enhance the aperture, if you like. That is to say, we not only need to look at the typical deviltry that emerges from Washington and their accomplices in Israel and in Pakistan, but we also should look at those who are flying underneath the radar. I'm thinking, for example, of Abu Dhabi, which in some ways would like to cultivate more positive commercial relations, not only with the United States, but with Israel, while mouthing lip service with regard to the plight of the Palestinians. And you could say the same thing to a certain degree with regard to Saudi Arabia, which you may recall pre-October 7th seemed to be on the verge of normalizing relations with Israel to the detriment of their alleged Palestinian brothers and sisters in Gaza. But I think that those kinds of plots, those kinds of diabolical plots have been overtaken by events. For example, we now see that there is a distinct possibility that the so-called peace accord between Egypt and Israel, which you can fairly see as a condition precedent to the crackdown on the West Bank and Gaza, on the further increase of settlements, particularly in the West Bank, where there are 700,000 estimated illegal settlers there. But now, with this apparent impending attack on the Rafah crossing, where Palestinians have fled to escape the bombing of northern Gaza, that could mean a rupture in the peace agreement between Egypt and Israel. That could present a whole new ballgame. And keep in mind that Egypt is in a bit of hot water because with the sanctions that I have alluded to that Yemen has imposed on ships going through the Suez Canal, those ships bring billions of dollars in revenue to coffers in Cairo. Those revenues have been sharply reduced. At the same time, that tension with Israel is skyrocketing. So we may be on the verge of a more impactful crisis than we have seen up to this point. And therefore, we could also see the increased destabilization of the U.S. ally that is Israel.
Dr. Horne, Naked Capital reports Ukraine collapse starting. What happens next? And they talk about, I mean, in politically, economically, militarily, it's spiraling, downhill. And how does Russia manage victory? I think is part of this. Anyway, your thoughts.
Well, certainly the aid package that the United States has crafted for Ukraine is in trouble. There is no guarantee that Speaker Johnson will even bring it to the floor. If that takes place, in light of the rather controversial statements that Mr. Trump has made with regard to NATO, this puts NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in a bit of hot water. Their continued misadventure and caper in Ukraine is coming a cropper. And you are correct to now begin to speculate on how Moscow can handle victory. But alas, there is many a slip twixt the cup and the lip. What I mean by that is, once again, flying under the radar is Poland. Now, if you pay careful and close attention to that recent interview that Tucker Carlson did with Mr. Putin, he talked not only quite a bit about the United States and their military role in Ukraine, he talked quite a bit about Poland. Not only in terms of Polish mercenaries, but he could have gone on to detail the fact that Poland is not only assuming the role of a kind of deputy sheriff for U.S. imperialism, but its military budget has gone through the roof at the same time that tensions with Berlin are escalating likewise because Poland has unresolved grievances with regard to World War II. It's asking for billions of dollars in reparations, perhaps trillions from the Berlin government. Poland also is eyeing ravenously Ukrainian territory that was previously part of Poland. And so we see that NATO is coming a cropper, that this crusade in Ukraine is basically going downward ever more sharply and rapidly. And at the same time, U.S. imperialism is trapped because they are at once helped to bankroll this particular catastrophe. But now the dollars are being turned off. And if those dollars are turned off, that'll be a blow to the bottom line of Raytheon, a blow to the bottom line of Lockheed as well. And that will not necessarily win plaudits from Wall Street. At the same time, the United States continues to maintain its military bases in Germany, not only with regard to Ramstein, but with regard to Stuttgart, where the Africa Command, which has its eyes on Africa, is now headquartered. And so there is quite a bit of investment, political, diplomatic, and economic, in this maneuver that we see unfolding in Ukraine. But now it seems to be headed like a goodly number of U.S. corporations for bankruptcy.
And Dr. Gerald Horne, as always, thank you so much for your time. Greatly, greatly appreciate that analysis. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you for